Well, hello and welcome, Robbie McHugh and Lisa Druzzi here from the EMS Leadership Academy. And it's great to see a bunch of people joining in the chat. Again, if you can hear us, just leave a comment and maybe where you're joining in from. We always love to hear where folks are joining in from around the world. Lisa and I were just talking this morning that somebody from Singapore joined one of our courses this morning. So it was really great to see folks from the global audience joining into this conversation, which is going to be around creating an implementation plan, because we've been talking this week about increasing engagement, motivation, and morale in our mini-series here.
That's great. Hi, Steve from Illinois. It's nice to see you. And hi, Corey, and hello, everyone. It's great to have people joining us live for this just really important conversation. And, you know, when we were preparing for the 2020 summit this past fall, we asked people, like, what were the biggest issues they were dealing with? And engagement, morale, and motivation were the biggest, by far, the absolute biggest things that people were saying they were struggling with. So we really wanted to tackle this issue and just try to give people a little insight, maybe, or new ideas, or you know, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer, and really, I trust that everyone who's on this call's commitment to making a difference and to you know, creating the best organization, the best experience for people that they can. They'll hear something for themselves in this, and hopefully it'll spark some other ideas and initiatives and innovation. So I'm truly excited to be here.
And this is, again, part 2 of our 3-part series this week. We're calling it a bit of a mini series for February and focusing on these important topics. I hope everybody had a chance to watch part 1, which was released yesterday, Taking the First Bite. Lisa, I don't know if you want to touch on that before we talk about the rest of this. That's really the basis for a lot of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. The Taking the First Bite, as you know, if you've watched it, is really what we were looking to do there was to help people really see that a shift in mindset is the very first thing that needs to happen if you're out to transform your culture. Mm-hmm. So the reason we call it a first bite is because the old saying, you know, how do you eat an elephant? And a culture of an organization is kind of like an elephant, right? It's huge and yet it's unseen, but elephants are seen. But so if you want to eat an elephant, the saying goes, you take it one bite at a time. But for a lot of people, figuring out what's the right bite, what's the bite I should take? What's the, you know, do I do this? Do I focus on that? You know, everything seems important and urgent. So we really narrowed it down in that video about take the first bite. The most powerful, in our experience, first step that you can take is to shift your mindset from trying to fix problems, trying to change things, to actually focusing on yourself and saying, oh, what if I came at this from a more inquisitive, more co-creative, more, what's the word I want? More development-oriented, growth-oriented, learner-oriented mindset. Because that's all those words lead to coming from a coaching mindset. It really is shifting from what do I need to fix? How am I going to change this? To wondering more, to co-creating with other people, to seeing people as pure possibility versus, you know, problems to solve.
Yeah, I love that, Lisa. And all too often, I think anyone watching this video could relate to feeling like every day walking through the door, you're figuratively putting out the fires. You're constantly maybe feeling like you're behind the 8 ball. You're trying to fix a bunch of the problems as they pop up. And that just can feel so overwhelming and time consuming. And imagine if we didn't focus all of our energy on trying to fix those problems, like you're saying, but shifting to what do we want to create? What if I took on a new mindset, or if I saw a new perspective on how to deal with certain situations? Honestly, that's a lot more exciting than having a bunch of problems.
And you know, you and I have done enough trainings together, and we've coached a lot of people together. And the thing that we, you know, come up against a lot of times is people are like, yeah, enough of this soft stuff. Let's get to the meat of the
Right. The
of
tactical
the issue.
strategy.
Yeah,
Right.
let's just talk strategy. But you know what? It's like if the best initiative in the world, the best idea in the world, if it's coming from a perspective of I'm doing this for you, to fix you, to change you, it is not going to be well received. And we've all had that experience where somebody gave us advice or gave us an idea, and it might even have been a great idea, but we're like, I don't know who you think you are, or it drives up defensiveness. And yet when it's somebody that comes from a space of caring and somebody that comes from a space of wondering, I wonder if this might be helpful to you versus here's what you should do, right? And so honestly, this is the heart of the matter, and everything that comes from that, anything you do from that space of help, of caring and seeing people as opportunities to grow and develop, is going to not only be more well received, but you're going to have more authenticity about it, and then you're going to see things that you didn't see before. That when we have blinders on about we just need Joe to be less lazy, and we just need Fred to be more helpful, more of a team player, and we need Susie to be more of a more aggressive or more whatever, right? Like whatever we think people need is coming from a very myopic perspective, and coaching really comes from a more open perspective of what can we discover, what is in the unseen that I don't see, what am I missing.
And Lisa, to that point here, I think Matthew brings up a really good point that a lot of people are agreeing with in the chat. Our culture is so deeply rooted, and some employees use the phrase, well, that's how we've always done it. And yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of leaders out there and there's a lot of employees out there that use that phrase. And I think it may stem from frustration about that's the way it's always been done. And I think it's a great point to be aware of, and that everybody watching this can be more aware of. It's like asking why do we do it that way? And having those conversations with people about imagine if, or what if we tried something different? I think that's a really great mindset to try on, especially in an organization that's got that deeply rooted culture and just doing things that they've always done before.
Yeah. And listen, the way we always did it was we had a camera to take pictures, and now we have phones, right? I mean, when I was growing up, we had one phone in the kitchen and it had rotary, right? And even early on, I'm really giving my age away, we had party lines. We didn't even have one line for our family, right? So yes, I'm that old. So, when you bump up against this mindset thing, is to just notice that it's likely coming from insecurity. People feel secure when they know what to expect, and they know how it's always been done. So it's not that you want to come at this guns a-blazing, oh, well, yeah, it's the way we've always done it, but we're going to change it. No, it's like to understand that people are saying that out of fear. They're saying that out of insecurity. They're saying it out of, a feeling of, well, I know how to do this, right? Mm. So, and sometimes even asking questions like, well, I got that we've always done it this way. Are there any problems with doing it this way? Are there any results that we're getting out of doing it this way that maybe don't work? What's good about the way we've always done it? What isn't good about the way we've always done it? So it's not attacking it, but more inviting people to engage in a question about it. And again, when you're coming from a coaching mindset, those kinds of ideas come to you naturally versus a script or well, I said this, and he didn't say that, so now I don't know what to do. It's more when you're in a coaching mindset, the space of the way you're coming from, and I don't mean it to sound so airy fairy and foofy, but it's different. It's just it opens up ideas and innovation from both parties. Not just the supervisor or leader having to come up with great ideas, but it's like, oh gosh, I wonder if there's things that people, when they created this way that we've always done it, that if they knew now what we know, would they have created it differently?
Yeah.
Right.
And we've got a comment here from Saskatoon in Canada.
Hello.
That she loved hearing the approach about coming with a wonder statement or an open mind. So
that's great.
And we love these questions, folks. So keep them coming. You can steer this conversation. We've got Hutch joining in from our Thrive Leadership Program. Yeah, so great. I guess we can move on to the next slide here.
Yeah.
So folks, also, Lisa and I put together this whole implementation guide. Sorry, trying to get it in the camera. 14 pages. We added some resources at the end. We've added, this is more of a workbook for you. It's free. It's available at emsleadershipacademy.com/series, and you can download it. We're going to leave this material up right through next week. So if you have anyone that's curious about checking it out, you could still watch part 1. It's a 30-minute session Lisa and I put together and recorded for you. Goes along with this PDF guide. And what we're going to cover today is how to use this guide in really creating an implementation plan. How do you make this happen? How do you bring these ideas to action?
Yeah, and I think that that bottom line there, a collaborative approach, is foreign to a lot of leaders, especially if they feel like their folks are disengaged. They're like, well, they don't want to help, or they're just coming in and doing their job. And it's easy to see that as the problem, as opposed to the culture is really what's leading to that result. And so the opposite of a collaborative approach is kind of like I'm in it for myself, right? And that is something that people do to protect themselves. So when you come from a collaborative approach, you're inviting people to take a risk. You're inviting people to invest in a change, and that can be very scary for people. So it's really important to set your expectations for, yes, you can expect the best, but also you have to kind of meet people where they're at. So I know it's a dichotomy, but when your intention is a collaborative approach, then it lets them, as Steve said, lets them be in on helping with the change. And people tend to resist change a lot less when they feel like they're a part of it. When they had something to do with it, then people aren't much, if they're resistant at all, it's very small when they feel like they're a part of something versus when they feel like something's kind of getting stuck down their throat, right?
And I think it comes out to what we've talked about before, is just who are you being in the moment? Are you being someone that's just looking for the problems in the situation? Are you being the leader that's going to look for every reason why it won't work? Are you being kind of the disciplinarian that's just looking to blame someone? Or are you coming at it authentically, really ready to listen to people with an open mind and hear what they have to say? And again, we've said it before, it's just a gift you can give someone. You're listening to what they have to say.
Absolutely. I could not agree with that more. So this is our intention for today, is to help you identify where are you currently with the idea of a coaching mindset. You may have noticed that in the video, the Taking the First Bite video, there are things that were pointed out as the sort of the essential elements, you could say, of having a coach's mindset and shifting to a coach's mindset. So it's really important to just acknowledge where you are. This is from novice to mastery, right? Some people are really, really well versed in a command and control type of leadership style, but they're not as well versed in this. So maybe they're more on the novice end. And again, anytime you're learning something new, it can be scary or it can feel like you're taking a risk. But if you keep in mind like what you're out for, it helps with that, right? Hell, you run into, situations where most people run out of. So I know you have a high tolerance for fear. So anyway, you want to see where you're at on that scale of novice to mastery, and then ask yourself what's working well first. You always want to start there. What's already working well? Where do you have some some prowess in this? Where are you, where have you developed it? Where do you feel comfortable? Because as we say all the time, success leaves clues. So if you look at where it's working well and discover, well, what is it about that situation, or what is it about who I'm being in that situation that it's working well? And then lastly, what areas do you want to focus on for maximum impact? What's the sort of pivotal action that you could take, or even an initial action, just to sort of go from inertia to movement, which is in most cases the absolute most energy that it takes. Is, to go from inertia to movement takes a lot of effort, but once you get going, then the momentum will help you. So.
I think this is really important to cover, Lisa, when you brought up this idea of having a coaching mindset versus coaching someone and having that almost that agreement that you're going to coach them, or their permission to coach them, versus this mindset you could come to a situation or a conversation with. Yeah,
a coaching mindset is really the lens you have as you're going through your day-to-day, everything you're doing, and again, it's going to be, sometimes you're just not going to have it on, and it's okay. You're going to notice that. And again, when you're on a call, not necessarily where an urgent call, as you always say, the 5 to 6% of the time when it's an emergency and you're you have to, it's command and control, that's where you should be. And then you coach someone, you might coach someone afterwards, or you might take on your coaching mindset again later and say, okay, these are some things, some gaps, or these are some places where I can really support people. But having a coaching, session or a coaching conversation is a discrete period of time where you and the person you're coaching agree that you're going to have a conversation about something, and the conversation is designed to have either a breakthrough, or to have a new insight, or to discover something about how to do something differently, or how to create something. So you might have somebody who you really see could be a leader in your organization, but maybe they're not as collaborative as they could be, or they need a little bit more support in being assertive, or something like that. So you might have a sit-down conversation with that person and coach them. And if you really want to know how to do that, we have this free guide available on our website. You can download, and it basically gives you the essential elements.
Right.
Yeah. And if you haven't done our mini course, the free course we have on communication, I highly, highly, highly recommend doing that as well, because that will help you to communicate effectively during that coaching session. So that's a coaching meeting or a coaching conversation. A coaching mindset is more of an approach. It's a perception. It's a way of leading where it shifts how you interact with people, and it shifts how they interact with you. I hope that's clear. If it's not, please ask questions in the chat. All right, so this is where the guide starts. So if you go to, I believe on page 6,
Yep.
You will see this is the first thing that's there. This is fundamental to being a leader who coaches, and that is to see your number one job is to develop and grow people all the time. That's all your job. That's your number one job. Not to say that you don't have other jobs, but that's your number one job as a leader, is to grow and develop people around you to be the best they can be. And that might be that they end up being a leader someday. It may be that they go on to medical school, or anything in between. But that who they are while they are in, your ripple effect, or in your, what's the word I want, your area, when they're around you and under your leadership, they've grown as a human being, and they've grown as a professional. So when you see yourself as essential to someone else's growth and development, or maybe essential is too strong, but you see yourself as having an impact on other people, then how you approach them changes. So as we said in the beginning, where are you doing that well? Who is it easy for you to be that way with. Because my guess, if you're like every other leader that's a human being on the planet, is some people that your lead just you love to be around. And you're like, oh, if I could have 20 of them or 50 of them, my job would be a piece of cake. And then you got the 10 to 20% of the low performers that probably fill up 80 to 90% of your time.
Absolutely.
And we have a whole nother program talking about that. But what you want to acknowledge and notice is like, where am I doing well in developing others? And how come? How come with those folks, I feel like I can grow and develop them. I feel like there's an ease to having the conversation. And then you'll see something out of that. You might see that, oh, I feel like they're more receptive, or I feel like they're more optimistic, or, you'll see something. And that will tell you that how you're listening to the people who it's not easy for you to grow and develop, or you don't have that relationship with, you can see that you are putting an interpretation in the way.
Mm-hmm.
You are labeling them in a particular way, that label could be valid, but it's your label. You are making a conclusion about other people. We all do this. This is human. We make conclusions about other people based on things we see and don't see. So when you discover that, oh, I think, I'm just going to use the term Joe, no offense to any Joes who are listening or who listen to this, but Joe is lazy and stubborn. So no, I don't want to grow and develop him. I just like to avoid him. Right? So that goes to bullet number 2. Where do I need improvement? Oh, with people who don't look receptive, who have certain, I have created certain labels for, or who look like they have certain characteristics. I need improvement with those people. I need improvement when I think someone's resisting me or not interested, right? Like, then you can own that. You can't change Joe. You can't change Joe, right? At least the vision or the image of Joe that you have in your head, right? Or the interpretation you have about Joe. But you can look and see like, oh, as a leader, here's where I'm limited. Here's where I have blind spots. Here's where I am not as effective. Does that make sense, Robbie?
Yeah, I think we all have those people. Again, we've had past experiences with. We just know how they're going to react, even though we probably don't. And even though we're probably more in control of how they're going to react than we think, because of the way in which we're listening and talking and trying to get our point across, it's all being influenced by kind of the labels we've put on that person. That's why it's so easy to talk to certain people, and other people, it's just like, oh my gosh, I'd rather have a tooth pulled.
Right. Well, and I can't remember if this is exactly said in the first part, the taking your first bite, but I know for sure we cover this in the mini communication course, is whenever we project onto someone else a conclusion like lazy or stubborn or whatever, it actually puts us in a box, because then that's how we relate to them. And so it limits our capacity, because we're like, oh, that's how this person is. So now I got to resort to manipulating and coercing or trying to change these things, which puts up more barriers. And by the way, the other person is going to resist because they don't maybe see themselves as lazy or stubborn. I rarely meet people who go, hey, yeah, lazy, stubborn, I'm the idiot in the room. Nobody says that, right? I'm the problem. Very few people will say that. So it's really cool to see that by labeling someone else, we're actually limiting ourselves. And then when we limit ourselves, our creativity and our ability to make a difference just gets reduced. Mm-hmm. So what's cool is to distinguish the behaviors from your interpretation, which again, we go into in a lot of detail in the mini communication course. When you can disconnect those things, then you see, oh, Joe does X not Joe is stubborn, right? Like, what's the activity that we see Joe doing or not doing that needs to change? Then the action becomes clear, right? So that's the third bullet here is in this area of growing and developing people, what's the first step that you can take? It could be the smallest step, it could be, oh, you know what? I'm just going to have coffee with Joe without an agenda and try to get to know that guy. Like, that could be it.
All right.
I'm just going to invite Joe for, a walk or, whatever. Like, it can be it may seem insignificant, but if you move in the direction of what you're trying to improve or what you're trying to create, the momentum starts to pull you in that direction. So that's what that third bullet's about. It's like, what's the first step? Like, I don't know, make it up. It doesn't have to be the right step or it's just a step that will move you more towards mastery and being able to grow and develop yourself. Grow and develop people.
And it could be, I love what you're saying about it, just inviting somebody for a walk. It could be getting them out of the environment that maybe where we all experience some form of frustration because things just aren't working, or that we're saying the person is lazy, or it all happens for the most part in a physical space, a station, an office, right? I think if we can think about branching outside of those spaces, we also give people an opportunity to see a different side of each other.
Yeah, take somebody on a coffee run. You know what I mean? Like you said, like, just create opportunities, and especially with people like you think you know so well. Mm-hmm. It's really good to get out of that environment and see them differently. I remember just brief share here, when I was in this class many years ago, we had to take on a project. And so we decided to do outside work at the Ronald McDonald House in our town. And I'll tell you something, working with that group of people in the outdoors for a couple of hours, I saw amazing, like, I really fell in love with these people. I was kind of lukewarm about them up until then. We were all kind of buttoned up in our suits, trying to be impressive in the class. And then we just got to know each other in this way. We were helping, we were all working on something together, and it transformed our whole classroom experience from that point on. So I think that it's really good to see that there are, just getting out of the environment sometimes is enough. Now, this is not a formulaic approach. Mm-hmm. We want you to ask yourself these questions. We want you to wonder, like, what is a first step I could take to enhance my ability to develop and grow other people? It might be practice being less judgmental, or practice being more open, or something like that.
So if this is resonating with you, drop a comment in the comments. We'd love to hear your feedback. We've got 3 more parts to go through, right, Lisa?
Yeah, I want to make sure people are still there, because I feel like, is this helpful?
and we've said it before too, like, our job as a leader is to create an environment in which people can grow, right? The job of a farmer is not to grow crops, it's to create an environment where the crops can grow.
Yeah, so true.
So this is the next part here, which we kind of started out with, I guess, talking about, like, taking on a new mindset. So maybe we can just ask ourselves some of these questions in the context of what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's so cool because being curious and having a learner's mindset, I wish we were taught this more, from the time because when we're little, we're that way. We're naturally curious, right? We as children, we expect to learn. And at some point in our, development, we shift from, it's okay to learn and fail. It's, as a matter of fact, failing is an essential aspect of learning. It's just we've attached so much weight and so much significance to failing that people tend to go into, I know this, or I know, again, which has people be resistant to change. And because of that, And because we think, especially as leaders, I think there's in supervisors and managers, there's this false sense of you have to know the answer. And it's just not true. You don't have to know the answer. And you can discover the answer with someone, you can learn. And I tell, when I'm working with a coaching client, I tell them all the time, like, if you and I were working for an hour on learning to play the piano, you would not expect to go play at Carnegie Hall tonight. Or if I was teaching you how to speak French for an hour, you wouldn't expect to go to France and be fluent. But when it comes to personal development, or it comes to things we think we should already know, we think, oh, I read that book, I know, or I took that course, I know. Versus, no, this is about 1%, 2%, getting a little bit better, getting a little bit better, getting a little bit better, and learning is along the way, continuing to be curious and learn. So you want to ask yourself, like, where are you already doing well in that? Is it when you're in a meeting with certain people, or when when it's technical stuff, when I got to learn how to, a better way to get an airway, or to whatever, or use this equipment, that I'm totally there with an open mind, and I'm totally there to learn. Like, I feel like it's worth my time. But when Joe talks to me, I already know what he's going to say. Right. So that would be an example in an area where you need improvement. Or, in my staff meetings, or my member meetings, or in my board meetings, I'm not there with a learner's mindset. I'm not. If I'm honest, I'm there like just trying to get through it. Like, that's so cool to see. Like, if you can authentically see that, then you can say, oh, well, if I only had to take a teeny tiny little step to get better at to develop a curiosity and develop a learner's mindset, if I only had to get a little bit better, what would the first step I would take? And then see if you can take that step, right? So that, to me, is what this means. It's being open and willing to take risks to fail, but not like, oh, I failed, I'm a loser. No, it's, oh, that's part of learning. We always say, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. And
yeah, I'd just like to add that, I think we see so many EMS leaders running their organizations the way they were running a call. They're expected to know their answers. They're expected to give the answer right then and there. And here's an opportunity to, again, pause, just say, well, that's an interesting point. I'll get back to you. Or let's talk about that. How can we do better? Like, what are your ideas? Imagine if your supervisor came to you and was authentically curious about, well, how do you think we should do that? And what's your input? Not from a judgmental perspective or a how dare you ask that perspective, but from that, what we've talked about, psychologically safe kind of perspective of, I really care about what you have to say. And not everyone's going to be receptive. I think Corey's point here is very valid, right? We have people that are very resistive to their own personal growth. I have so many people that I'm responsible for. I find that I work on the mass of those who want to have the personal growth. And in any organization, you're going to have, Lisa mentioned before, you're going to have the highly engaged, maybe top 10% that unfortunately tend to ignore because they're doing such a great job.
Right.
We're usually focused on the bottom 10 to 15% that are actively disengaged, that you could give them a desk made out of gold and they would complain how heavy it is. It happens in every organization. And you have the biggest opportunity with the folks in the middle, the 60 to 70% of the folks that could go in either direction, towards the high performing or towards the low performing side.
Yeah.
So again, think about probably the bottom 10 to 15%. They're not a lost cause, but where are you putting your attention? How about shifting that a bit to the middle folks or the high performers that know what personal growth is, that maybe had a bad experience in the past, and maybe they'd be more receptive to it if it was a more common conversation, as opposed to, well, we need to fix you because you're the problem and we're going to put you through this training. So just some of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I would, the only thing I would add is, again, this what we're talking about here is about growing and developing yourself as a leader. So I agree that, a rising tide raises all boats, right? So if you're working on the folks that are in the middle and up, and especially you need to focus on the top performers, right? You want more of that, focus on that, right? And that will move your culture in that direction. And usually people who aren't up for that will self-select out, and then you'll attract more people. And we'll talk a lot about that on Monday in the recruitment and retention webinar. But the other piece here is to remember that this isn't about fixing the low performers. This is about you as a leader having that open, curious mindset, so that if an opportunity does come up, like, oh, and you have an idea about how to help a particular person, then you would act on that. It doesn't mean that you focus on all your energy. No, as a matter of fact, that's the opposite of that's like what most leaders do on an innocent misunderstanding about what most leaders do is they do, like Robbie said, they focus on the problems and the burning, the stuff that's on fire, right? So my thoughts here about that is to just keep wondering, like, okay, if I have someone who seemingly is against or resistant to personal growth, that's an area where I need improvement, you as a leader. And then what's a small step that you could take to improve in that area? It might be to think differently about those people, or it might be to start with one person, or it might be to doing, some interviews of people. I don't know. And that's, to me, that's what brings your power back. Because as soon as we start going, what do I do about the resistant people? It's like you've given your power over. So I see you see that it's really about growing yourself, which grows others, because you do have that ripple effect. So.
Yeah, spot on, Corey. That's great.
Yeah, very cool.
All right, should we move to third part here?
I love this graphic that you found. I don't know, this may be saying the same thing in a different way, but we have all these day-to-day interactions, right? And sometimes it's, hi, how are you? How was your weekend, right? And we look for the big conversations, like, we're these little conversations, like every interaction you have with someone is an opportunity to form a relationship, deepen a relationship, and to create a new opening for action. So you want people to be more engaged. Instead of thinking in terms of people, think in terms of singular, and think in terms of if they're not engaged, it's a reflection of how you're engaging with them. And that's hard to hear. And coming from all the love and all the honor a human can have for other people, that's where we're coming from. But if you can see that if people are disengaged, it's has to do with your engagement with them and your willingness to try different ways to connect, but not like I need to connect with them, but more from a genuine caring and wondering about how can we, if this person has the key to the kingdom, or the cure for cancer, or whatever, the biggest problem that we have in our organization, this person has the answer, they just haven't expressed it yet. How would you talk to them? Right? But we don't tend to talk to people that way. Everybody feels like a cog in the wheel, and especially if they're, a little thorny, right? Or a little, old crotchety and all of that, right? So I like to think, listen, if you can interact with people as if they're geniuses and they have what you're looking for, you're going to listen differently, you're going to ask questions differently, and you're going to just be different with them. And then who doesn't want more of that in their life, right? So when you treat people that way, they want to be around you. And I think, Robbie, you certainly experienced this and when your organization that you were the president of, and we've seen it in other organizations. So again, the same three questions, but you want to think of it in terms of some of the small little areas. I don't know, small is not the right word, but like just the ordinary ways that we interact with people. and ordinary ways that we could empower people and acknowledge people, or ask a question, like, and genuinely listen for the answer.
Lisa, that is an amazing point. To imagine if the people that you interact with have maybe they've identified an issue that 6 months from now could totally change someone's life, right? Somebody maybe slips and falls, or a stretcher lands on them, right? Something's going on in your organization that you're not seeing, a blind spot. And is that person going to speak up or not? And if that responsibility is on our shoulders of how we're interacting with them, and do they feel comfortable enough to bring that, hey, I noticed this, or do they just write it off like, well, they're not going to listen, they're going to judge me? Imagine if your interaction makes somebody so comfortable they bring up something again that would prevent somebody's from losing their life or their livelihood or becoming paralyzed in your organization. I mean, that's a really interesting way to look at and those day-to-day interactions, and how are we thinking about what ideas they could have. And
it's not just a little, I mean, it's not just a pipe dream. I worked in as a consultant on a team at Roadway Express many years ago. And in that they did I won't go into all the details, but they basically interviewed people from the mechanics and the mail clerks and the sales team and customer service, and every level of the department, every level of the organization, including the president, vice president, executives, everyone. And they created these events. And at one of the events, they were talking about how much money they were losing, and because of the, they're a union shop, and there's so many non-union competitors. And this mechanic said, well, I have an idea. And so the whole room listened, like it was like that old commercial for E.F. Hutton, right? And he goes, we get fines all the time for the trucks being too heavy. He said, I have an idea to, and it was this simple measuring tool that they could put in the gas tank to determine how much the gas tank weighed. In other words, how much was the gas tank adding to the weight of the truck, so that they could adjust how much freight they would carry. Within a year of that finding and them doing that and teaching the truck drivers how to do it, they saved like $10 million in fines, something like that, $8 to $10 million. What? That's the people closest to the work are seeing things that we can't see when we're removed from the situation. So, obviously that's not a life and death, but that's a huge deal, right? I mean, and just imagine what we're missing because we don't have eyes for it. We're just not looking, not our fault. And the people that are on the ground, closest to the tasks are the ones who really see. So,
at least I think it leads perfectly kind of into this next segue, is good into this idea that each person really wants to contribute and make a difference. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that sometimes is hard for people to hear. But in my experience, nobody gets up in the morning and nobody as a child said, when I grow up, I want to be a jerk and I want to just never be great with people. No, people want to be great. They just have gotten disappointed and disillusioned, and but that doesn't mean that they're not deep down, or not, it's not even that deep, but that they want to help, they want to contribute. And one of my favorite stories of this is when I was doing some consulting work with an organization, and it was a Department of Social Services. And when I walked in the room to work with this team that had been kind of, the horror show team, they put me, they were like, here, if you can work with them, we'll consider you for other things. So I was like, all right. So I go in and I walk in the room, and the woman that was sitting to my right, the very first woman, we were at this big long table, she turned her back on me and picked up her newspaper and started reading. Like, what is happening right now? And she was older, and everybody was looking to see how was I going to react. And what I did was I just decided I wasn't going to give her the show. I was going to just be great. And And at some point, she started to turn around. And as she turned around, I said, it occurs to me. I said, you've been here a long time, right? And she said, yeah, 30 years. I said, wow. I said, you must have so much to contribute and so much knowledge. And she kind of gave me a look, like she wasn't going to get fooled by me. And I said, well, how come you haven't retired if you hate it here so much? And she goes, because I don't want my people, meaning her clients, I don't want my clients to get mistreated by other people. Mm-hmm. I go, are you telling me you're a softie and you like people? She started laughing. And she then became like the second trainer in the room the rest of the day, because she saw that once she realized like she really does want to make a difference. And the way she could make a difference was training other people how to be great. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I was like, from that moment on, I said, if that crotchety old woman she could transform before my eyes, then there's nobody out there that doesn't want to make a difference. Mm-hmm. Now, the way they want to contribute may not be the way appropriate. Like they may want to contribute by being loud and and then you can help them to see that what really works is something else, right? And again, if you're coming from a coaching mindset and seeing people as wanting to make a difference, and what if the way they're acting is their way of contribute, like they're trying to contribute? Mm-hmm. It's a square peg in a round hole. And what if you could help them figure out a way to contribute in a more effective way? Like what would that make possible for your organization? And then again, what's the first step you could take?
And maybe, again, they just don't have the distinctions that you're learning today. They don't have the tools in their toolbox of how to effectively get their point across, obviously, in that situation. We've got a lot of good questions coming in, but I also want to respect people's time and get through some of the rest of this section.
So. Yeah, I just want to say, because I just read some of what's written, and the thing a lot of times the old sort of form of leadership has to do with people wanting to, like, thinking that, if you have to have respect and hierarchy and command and control and all that kind of stuff. And just like our phones have evolved and our medical equipment has evolved and all kinds of, our leadership styles have to evolve. And unfortunately, there's a belief that if you're kind and caring, it's equated with being weak. And that's just not true. And study upon study upon study has demonstrated that people who feel cared for and feel like they matter outperform those that feel intimidated and afraid.
Yeah, and those that lead from fear, right?
Yeah. So good for you, Steve, for sticking to your guns and being the leader people wanted to follow.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one.
All right, good stuff.
In a way, this should have been first, I suppose, but it really does. It does take dropping our judgments and our labels. Right. The way I say this in one of my books, and you and I talk about this in our training all the time, is we got to stop shooting on other people.
Yeah, like stop shooting on yourself and stop shooting on other people.
Yeah, should SHOULD. We said, we're not swearing. We hate when other people say to us, well, here's what you should do, or here's what you should have done in that situation. It's like, you weren't there. How do you know? We don't like it when people do it to us, but we do it to others all the time. And it's all innocent. It's well-meaning. It just doesn't work. So if we can understand that what we're always seeing from other people is just a snapshot of them. I don't care how many hours a day you spend with them and how much you think you know them. You are seeing a snapshot if you work with them. And even if you're friends with them outside, you are still seeing a snapshot, because people don't show their whole self. You don't know everything that they've been through. I was talking to somebody last night that I've known for years, and I told her, I don't want to go into it, but I told her that I was at the World Trade Center on 9/11. She never knew that. And we've been friends for years, and she didn't know that about me. So, it wasn't relevant to anything. It's not relevant to this, but the point was, like, we knew each other for that many years, and that she didn't even know that. And that was not a little deal in my life, right? Mm-hmm. So when we realize that we're judging somebody from a snapshot versus being an opening to really get to know them, really see what we can do. And this image, I think, is perfect because it's, it's a butterfly coming out of a chrysalis, which, if you meet somebody during their caterpillar stage, you're going to have one impression. You meet them in the middle of that chrysalis, it's gross, and then you see them on the other side. We're all going through that in one way or another, and you don't know where you're meeting people. So being kind and being open to learning, and again, I'm not saying you accept abuse. I'm not saying you put up with, bullying or, any kind of oppressive remarks. I'm not saying you accept those things at all. But even those, if you can come at them without your judging and criticizing them, but more from a place of wondering and learning and how can you help this person see things differently? And if they can't, then yeah, maybe you have to separate them from your organization. But you look and see, where are you really good at being open and not having labels about people, and get curious about that. And then wonder where you need improvement. And then wondering if you could be, 1 to 2% more open with people. If you could add, like, Joe is lazy sometimes, just adding that sometimes will open the door for you to see times when they're not, right? So if you're even willing to say, well, maybe I'm not 100% right about this person. Maybe this person is lazy or stubborn under certain conditions and certain situations, and I'm just judging them and, saying they're always like that. That'll give you eyes for seeing when they're not that way, and maybe seeing a bigger picture of the person. And it's freeing for you too, because as I said before, why put yourself in a box? Why create a label for somebody else that only boxes you into how you now interact with them?
So good. All right, moving to I think the final really reflective question.
Wow. This could be a whole conversation, because everything we just talked about has to do with listening, doesn't it? But when you listen to understand versus listening to get your point across, I think our next slide is the Stephen Covey quote. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Can you put that up? Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. And I know I've been guilty of this many times. And it doesn't ever go well. But if I listen without an agenda, and I'm really out to hear the other person's point of view and what how they got to that conclusion, like how they got to that opinion, there's so much I can learn. And sometimes it changes my mind, but sometimes it helps me to see why they're so stuck in where they're stuck, is because there's a misunderstanding. And, we're all looking at things from different places. Would you mind sharing the story from the other night about the recycling?
So we, the other night, as part of our Thrive leadership membership that we have, one of our great leaders was offered up a story of how she felt frustrated and kind of overwhelmed. And, she came into her organization on her day off, and she noticed a package there that everybody was waiting for. So she unboxed it and folded the box up to put it next to the trash, and went about their day. She got that equipment out there on her day off, and was just feeling really stressed about the situation. And I think we pointed out the fact that I think, and when she came back on her day off, like a few days later, or on her work day, a few days later, the box is still sitting there next to the trash. And I think it goes to the point of, like, well, what are the people, like, that leader was thinking, oh my gosh, people are so lazy around her, they couldn't even empty the trash. They couldn't bring out that box. But did the people see you coming in on your day off to do all of that behind the scenes? Probably not. They probably didn't have that story in their head, or the best interpretation. It was probably the interpretation that gets a lot of people worked up, is they just left a box for me to take out their trash. Like, what am I, the help? Am I the cleaning crew? So just think about and imagine the different perspectives and what could be going through somebody's mind, and really kind of the ridiculous meaning we attach to the littlest things. I know I've gotten triggered by it before. Like, take out your own stupid boxes. But then I'm like, all right, I'll just take the boxes out. It's not a big deal. I'll get a few more steps in the day, get a little more exercise out to the dumpster. I'm not beyond like helping clean up a bit. I don't know if anyone else has ever been there, but it was just kind of a funny story that I was so triggering for that leader, and can be so meaningless at the same time.
Yeah. And a simple, again, easy for us to say because we weren't in the moment, but a simple, hey, would somebody mind, I'm up to here with doing this other project for us. Would somebody mind helping me out with this? Probably, who knows? People probably would have jumped at the opportunity. I mean, who knows? I'm making that up. But it's this place where we come from judgments, and then we decide that that's the way it is. Right. And then we're trying to do our job or trying to grow and develop people on top of the judgment that we made, not realizing that we put the judgment in the way, right? We're not realizing that we put that barrier up because we interpreted a situation and then we believe that interpretation. So, that goes back to the judgment. So when you listen from understanding, it's another way of saying listen without judgment. Listen without trying to answer a problem or fix this person or even fix the situation. You don't have to. You just need to listen. Often those people will work themselves out of the problem by thinking it through out loud. And they'll sometimes even go, yeah, this isn't even as big a problem as I thought it was when I walked in here, Suddenly I feel stupid for even bringing it up. But it's okay because you were like, you know what? You needed to talk it out. That's all right, right? And you've created a relationship with that person. So just being willing to listen from a place of understanding and dropping your judgments and even judging yourself. It's you're doing the best you can given the circumstances. You're doing the best.
And David said it's like exercising a muscle, right? It's asking people more about them with no other agendas in mind. It can feel awkward at first. It may be pointless, but it gets so much easier the time you do it, and the stronger you get at it, right? You become more authentic.
That's right. And that's getting from novice to mastery. So we had a cat in there. I had to put a dog in there. So now what, right? Like now if you look at your guide, first you want to just celebrate, after you've done this work, you've done this thinking, you've made hopefully, maybe not every one of those points but you've created some, what is the step you can take? What's the next step? And then you want to, like 30 days to 60 days from then you want to evaluate how you're doing. How is what you're doing? Is it working? Is it not working? And by working or not working, we mean, is it producing the result you want to produce? And you want to get out of the mindset of, well, I tried this and it didn't work and screw it. But no, like, oh, I learned one thing that didn't work. Right? It's said that Thomas Edison, when people said, "How did you have the wherewithal to keep going when you 10,000 tries before you found the light, a filament that worked?" And he said, "Well, I found 9,999 of them ways that didn't work." But what's really cool about him is, again, from what I've read about him, is he at 5,027 try, he didn't know there was another 4,000 and whatever to go, and we can't know that as leaders either. But that doesn't mean that to try and to learn and to try something else and learn. So you want to look back and evaluate. Well, oh, this thing I thought didn't work, it kind of did. Now that I look at Joe is helping out more. When I first did it, I didn't think it worked, but now 30 days later, I see it is. So when you look at it with fresh eyes, and if you look on the last page of the, not the last page, but the last, I don't know what page it is.
Page 10.
Page 10 in the handout, you would make a copy of that. And for each area that you're working on,
page 9.
You want to evaluate how you're doing and then look to see, well, what's next? What's the next step? And be sure to celebrate along the way, because you are moving in the direction you want to be moving in. And that's the important thing.
And try to be deliberate about it. Do this 30 days right after you're trying a new habit. Do it 60 days to reevaluate. You've invested your time, and we appreciate everyone that's here for this this important talk and the contribution that you're bringing to the conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's the next slide.
Oh, sorry, I forgot that was, yeah. So these are you can just move on.
Yeah, and just again, I love the little "be better" right phrase. Right, your whole purpose really in life is just to be, like you said earlier, Lisa. Just try to be 1% better, right? Try to be 1% improved, and it's all about making progress and not about perfection.
Yeah, and it's never done.
Right.
The journey to leadership and is a mountain with no top. So you might as well enjoy the climb, right? It's really invigorating and satisfying and enlivening when you come at it from, oh, this is my journey. This is who I am, is growing myself as a leader.
And you said it earlier, Lisa, it's a spectrum, right? From novice to mastery. You're continuously improving and becoming better in every interaction. And we said this earlier, that just being authentic and caring is key. Bringing that way of being to the conversations really will that way of being will come across in the conversations.
And I find that even if if you authentically care about people, even when you have to be more of a disciplinarian, or you have to bring the rules, or the guidelines or the operating principles or whatever it is to the table, people can hear them. It's not about being a pushover. It's not about being not enforcing things. We're not talking about being, like that, but more whatever you're doing, coming from a place of caring and genuinely interested in the other person. And interested in what you can learn and what might be possible for them too. So
absolutely. We would like to tell people about our Keeping the Best program. A lot of what we've talked about today is kind of adopting that coaching mindset, and we take a deep dive into this. So you can get more information. We only open this up about once a year, this program. You do get lifetime access to it. So emsleadershipacademy.com/KTB for Keeping the Best. And really our goal is to focus on, for the recruitment and retention side of things, like how do you develop and improve retention in your organization so that your recruitment efforts are that much more fruitful, right? You're not constantly getting people in the door and they're leaving as quickly as they come in, right? That revolving door concept. And I think with all these goals, we hope is that leaders want to positively impact the culture. And what we're talking about today is a culture of engagement, motivation, and morale, what you can do as a leader. And here's some, we have an entire course set up with distinctions of being a good coach. To be a good coach is to be a good leader. And Lisa has created a great kind of vault, training vault, as well as a bonus, which includes a copy of her book. And
I interviewed a couple coaches,
right,
also who do leadership work, and also I worked with another coach, and we put together a bunch of videos of different scenarios, like if you're dealing with somebody who's resistant, or you're dealing with somebody who's not following protocol, or if you're dealing with somebody who maybe is not leaving their home life at home, and like different scenarios and ideas for how you could coach them through that. So you have to, go through the course, and then you can have access to those videos. And we're constantly updating. We just added a whole bunch of new content to it, and we're going to continue to do that as long as we have the course. So
great. Well, this brings us to an end. And if you're watching, just leave us a comment. What was your biggest takeaway from this training? What maybe did you learn from yesterday's session, the 30-minute session, about how do you go from really feeling maybe overwhelmed of where to start and take that first bite to tackle these challenges when we talk about, again, engagement, motivation, morale? We developed the series because we had over 10 pages of feedback after the EMS Leadership Summit last year. And this is one of the biggest topics people were concerned about, they want help with. So we'd love to hear your feedback. What are you getting out of this? We want you to put it on your calendar for tomorrow. You can also join us for a live coaching session where we're going to just demonstrate some of these practices. We're going to have somebody join us live and really come to us with where they're feeling stuck or challenged. And it's a phenomenal opportunity, not just for the person getting coached, but for you to watch how they get coached and how you can bring a person to a conclusion where they're thinking for it on their own. Because us as leaders, our goal is to develop more leaders, right? We don't want to just develop more people that are kind of mindlessly following some policy. We want people to respect policies, but we also want people to be able to think for themselves in an organization. And we don't want people to always come to us with probably with all the problems, right? We want people to think about how they can slow down and how they can really solve it for themselves. So it's a great opportunity tomorrow. We're going to be live at 1:30 Eastern. This recording, yesterday's recording, tomorrow's recording are all going to be available. Again, we'd love to hear your comments. We have Steve saying, thank you very much. Feels like he's on the right path and continuing towards improvement.
And I just want to mention that we do have a spot. If someone who's watching would like some coaching, we have a spot available for tomorrow. We have someone and we have one spot available. So if anyone who's watching is interested, just email at support@emsleadershipacademy.com and we'll tell you what you need to do. It's very easy.
It can be more anonymous too if you just want to join in with your audio, if you don't feel comfortable maybe. But we hope you'll take us up on that opportunity to get the live coaching in the moment and maybe have a breakthrough with some area. So David
and contribute to other people, because if you have that issue, I promise you somebody in this community also has that issue. So we would love to have another person if you're available.
And David's, that's great to hear your takeaway. It's that he's identifying maybe those people that he's placed a label on and trying to reframe that thinking and work to be to
coach the behavior, not change the person. That's really good.
Good.
And Donald Hutch said, I take my number one negative person to coffee with his captain. I like this pathway. That's great.
Hutch.
It's great. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for participating. We love doing these and we love hearing from you, and we really appreciate your authentic engagement, and let us know what else we can do to be helpful. And we hopefully will see all of you tomorrow for the live coaching demonstration.
All right. Take care, everyone. Stay healthy.